Do not adjust your video. Do not adjust your audio. Everything is fine. Due to some server moves, we have to take another sabbatical this week from the funniest Bible study in the history of the universe. Instead, we will present something lighter for you. It is a right-wing fairy tale. Something can be right-wing and not Christian, but nothing can be Christian and not right-wing. God is right-wing, period. So even though there's nothing overt about Christianity in this fairy tale for children, home educators who love their children can play this for their children at any time. It is 100% safe and free from liberal propaganda. We will return soon, as soon as our studios are moved and our servers are set. Right-wing fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time there lived in a village a country girl who was the sweetest little creature ever seen when she was asleep. Her widowed mother naturally loved the girl with excessive fondness, and her grandmother doted on her still more. The elderly and good woman made for her a pretty little red-colored hood, which so much became the little girl that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. The grandmother wanted Red to be modestly dressed because she loved her and wanted to protect her. All of Red's friends were drawing selfies of themselves in the dirt, but Red's grandmama had a strong influence on the little girl. Red dressed modestly. She loved her red cloak and hood. One day, her mother, having made some lunch, said to Red, "Go, my child, and see how your grandmother does, for I hear she is ill. Carry her some of this healthy bacon, fresh veggies, raw whole milk, and a little pot of butter." So Little Red Riding Hood set out with a basket filled with the healthy, low-carb food and fresh butter for her grandmother's house. The grandmother lived in a little gated community village, a little ways off the town that Red and her mom lived in. As she was crossing the woods, which lay in her road, she met a large wolf, which had a great mind to eat her up, but dared not, for fear of some woodcutters who were at work near them in the forest. The wolf was evil, but not stupid. He did speak to her, though, and asked her whither she was going. The little girl, who hadn't known her late father, had no male role model. Her mom should have remarried quickly, but the town had started a welfare program for single moms, and her mother thought it was far better to steal from the village taxpayers than to marry as she should have done. This quickly became a problem throughout the town because Red was best friends with Goldilocks, who in the next tale is about to become not only a thief, but a B&E, breaking and entering, specialist also. So with no male role model, Red talked to the wolf. She answered him, "I am going to see my grandmama and carry this healthy, low-carb food to her." "Does she live far off?" growled the wolf. "Oh yes," answered Little Red Riding Hood. "Beyond the mill you see yonder at the first house in the village." "Well," said the wolf, "I will take this way and you take that way and see which will be there the soonest of the two of us." The wolf set out full speed, running as fast as he could and taking the nearest way, while the little girl took the longest. The wolf needn't have bothered with the routes. Red was a girl and ran just like one. Also, being female, she got sidetracked from the task. As she went along, she began to gather nuts, run after butterflies, and smell such flowers as she found within her reach. The wolf got to the dwelling of the grandmother first and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" said some small voice in the house. "It is I, your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf, trying to sound like Little Red Riding Hood, but in reality, talking with that phony homo lisp that the gay wolves all use. He said, "I have brought you some food and a little pot of butter that Mama has sent you." The good old woman, who was ill in bed, called out, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." The wolf, being a public school graduate, didn't know what a bobbin was, so he just jumped through the open window. The wolf then jumped upon the poor old grandmother and ate her up in a moment. He was famished because his feminist wife had put him on the Pritikin no-meat diet, so he had only had soy and grain and fruit for 7 days. His estrogen levels were skyrocketing and needed to be quelled. His little toddler baby had more upper body strength than he after a week of being a vegetarian. The wolf then shut the door and laid himself down in the bed and waited for Little Red Riding Hood, who very soon after reached the house. Tap, tap, tap at the door. Who is there?" cried the wolf back to that phony homo lispy voice, but not quite as easy to pull off with the fresh grandma meat inside his stomach surging his T levels. Red was at first a little afraid at hearing the different voice, but she thought perhaps her grandmother had a cold, so she answered, "It is your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood. Mama has sent you some good food." The wolf cried out in a softer voice, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." He figured Red would know what a bobbin was since she was too young to be dumbed down by the government school system. Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin and the door went open. When she came into the room, the wolf hid himself under the bedclothes and said to her, trying all he could to speak in that girly, feeble homo voice, "Put the basket on the stool, my dear, and take off your cloak and your hood and come into bed." He was, after all, more of a liberal than a wolf. They all are. So Little Red Riding Hood, who always used to do as she was told, straight removed her cloak and stepped into bed. But she thought it strange to see her grandmother, to see how she looked in her nightclothes. And so she cried out, "Dear me, Grandmama, what great arms you've got." "There are so much for the better to hug you with, my child," replied the wolf. "But Grandmama," said the little girl, "what great ears you've got." "They are so much better to hear you, my child," replied the wolf. "But then, Grandmama, what great eyes you've got," said the little girl. "They are so much better to see you, my child," replied the wolf. "And Grandmama, what great teeth you've got," said the little girl, who was now beginning to get rather afraid. "They are to eat you up," said the wolf, and saying those words, the wicked creature fell upon Little Red Riding Hood and ate her up in a moment. The moral of the story? Never, ever go near anybody who talks like a homo.